Everyone gets tired without a long rest. A break of a month or two is essential for anyone looking to escape the monotony of their daily routine, to forget the rigors of work and the dreary grayness of everyday existence. Family, for some people, such a burden as work, and this is just about me. My name is Max. At the age of 42, I stand in the knowledge that I might not be the epitome of a perfect family man. However, my family and their well-being to me, my prosperity is inextricably linked to my work, and my business is 2 auto stores and several car washes. In general, I am a person with money, and more importantly for me, well-mannered and not embarrassed by my age. These are qualities I owe to my parents. My wife, on the other hand, is my opposite. She indulges in frivolous spending, often on herself and her friends, and organizes unusual gatherings at our country home. As a result, I am faced with complaints from neighbors. This would be more understandable if she were in her 20s. Surprisingly, she's just 2 years younger than me. I can't fathom what might have shaped her during her childhood, but she hasn't always been this way. We were once equally committed to securing a prosperous future for ourselves and our children, offering them the finest education and opportunities, and we succeeded in doing so. Both of our sons are now pursuing their studies and have their own apartments and cars. Once our sons started living on their own, there was a transformation with her that was instantaneous, as if she was just waiting for this moment. Our relationship began to involve frequent arguments, breaking of dishes. She became increasingly sensitive to the slightest taunts. In general, there was a complete 180-degree change in her behavior. Moreover, work began to weigh on her more and more. Our sales were declining, and my subordinates advised me to go on vacation. I had no reason to ignore their advice. I personally managed the team and was always as responsive to them as they were to me. However, on one particularly difficult day, I had reached my limit and decided it was time to take a break. I said to myself, "It's time for a vacation." After an hour of work and a few glasses of whiskey, I approached my staff and told them I was taking a vacation. Everyone was sympathetic. I handed things over to my deputy Andy, a man with ambition, well respected in the team, and a candidate to take my place. Andy took on his new responsibilities with great enthusiasm. I anticipated leaving with a heavy heart, but to my surprise, there was no such feeling. I happily got into my car and drove home in peace. Upon arriving home, I found Eva, my wife, engrossed in her activities, watching beauty bloggers and formulating plans to follow in their footsteps and even outshine them. She had faith in her abilities, but I knew she'd screw it up. I said, "We need to talk, and it can't be put off until tonight." She replied, "But this blog is very interesting. Are you saying you're not interested in me anymore?" That's exactly what I'm saying. It has already become a complete disregard for me, for what I say, for my wants and needs. Did it irritate me? Absolutely. Did I envision a return to the way things used to be? Undoubtedly. However, such opportunities are as rare as 1 in 100,000, and I suppose I didn't receive that chance. "All right, tell me, I'm listening to you," she said to me, as if she were doing me a favor. "I've taken a vacation." "Don't interrupt. I'm craving a change of scenery. The destination is inconsequential. All that matters is escaping from it all." "Well, that's intriguing," she remarked with a slight smile. "Where to? That's a decision we'll make together." "All right, we'll make that decision over dinner tonight. I'll research possible destinations and attractions, and I also need $10,000. For what? Are you planning to splurge on swimsuits, beach dresses, and sandals?" I've been dreaming about these things for a long time. Upon transferring the funds to her account, I observed her fidgeting with excitement, although, in my opinion, it appeared somewhat extravagant. Simultaneously, she delved into researching various resorts, island destinations, and the like. Meanwhile, I lay down on the wide bed. I anticipated the imminent arrival of a profound sense of relaxation. For the remainder of the day, I simply lay in bed, drifting in and out of slumber, repeating the cycle. As evening descended, it was time to have a conversation with Eva where we were going. I exited the room, expecting the aroma of a delicious meal to fill the house. We would be deciding at dinner after all, but there was no smell at all. Eva remained firmly entrenched on the couch, seemingly sinking deeper into it. "When's dinner?" I inquired. "Can't you see?" she retorted. "What don't you see? I'm still trying to figure out where we're going. It's quite the challenge." Her words left me nearly speechless. I thought I would take care of the vacation expenses, and she would take care of dinner and come up with ideas. However, it turned out that I had overestimated her capabilities. She hadn't even placed an order for food delivery. Looking in the refrigerator, I was surprised to find it empty. Is she feeding off the energy of her subscribers? Finding no other options, I turned on my laptop and placed an order for food to be delivered. The food was already ready. Of course, it would satisfy our hunger, but it couldn't replace the homemade food I adore. Meanwhile, Eva was in the final stages of finalizing travel options. I anticipated the food delivery, which thankfully didn't take long to arrive. Sitting together at the table, we immersed ourselves in discussing our options. She listed a few options. We could visit Barcelona, Tyrone, or Venice. I wondered, well, what other options do we have? We could go to Cuba. I asked, "What's there? Havana? Varadero?" She paused for a moment, then said, "Or maybe we should explore what there is in the East. How about Vietnam? Is there anything there at all?" After nearly 3 hours of debate filled with lots of words, arguments, and tempting suggestions for a place, we finally settled on Cuba. I was surprised when Eva decided to handle the dishwashing herself. As she took care of that task, I immersed myself back into my laptop and successfully secured tickets to Cuba at a great price. We snagged 2 tickets in the comfort class with an option to upgrade to business class for an additional fee. The flight was scheduled for departure in just 4 days, providing us ample time to pack, purchase any missing items, and make necessary preparations in the interim. I got cozy on the bed, relaxing. A few minutes later, Eva joined me. She had a delightful figure. In her 42 years, she was good-looking, athletic tummy, shapely legs. I couldn't resist the urge to touch her, and my fingers gently caressed her thigh. When I reached up to kiss her neck, I was unexpectedly rebuffed. "What are you up to? What about our marital duties? Are you suggesting we do this in the month when the 3-horned bull crosses the path of the scarlet dove?" I was taken aback. "What? Look at astrological calendars. According to them, couples who have been together for more than 5 years should adhere to strict abstinence during that month." I'm shocked. No, I'm really shocked by what I just heard. I boiled over. It was only a few moments later, however, that I remembered how we had made love over the past few years. Memories of those passionate encounters were few and far between. They could be counted on the fingers of one hand. Rolling over onto my other side and letting out a heavy sigh, I finally drifted into sleep. As I rose from bed, I made my way to the bathroom to wash my face, where I couldn't help but scrutinize my reflection. Age was certainly making itself felt, but I also noted that my stomach could use some tightening up. That became my focus in the time leading up to my flight. After locating a promising fitness coach on the internet, I promptly scheduled an appointment and headed there the same day. I get your point, Max, but it's simply not feasible to get rid of the belly in such a brief time frame. The best we can do is work on toning it, and even that will demand a significant amount of training. This is what the trainer informed me. Money isn't an issue, and I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. So let's begin right away. Coach's description was not an exaggeration. It genuinely felt like a living nightmare to me. I haven't been this committed since my time in the Army. But despite that, I managed to see some real results by the end of these sessions. My arms and legs grew stronger, my stomach, while not completely gone, visibly shrank. Even my chubby cheeks slimmed down noticeably. All in all, my transformation was quite evident, and even my wife noticed it and found it rather appealing. On the day of departure, I woke up in the morning, shaved, and we packed our 4 suitcases. As we drove to the airport and headed directly to the check-in desks, an unprecedented wave of early morning euphoria washed over me. I was simply filled with happiness. The airport was flooded with people. The clacking heels of slender flight attendants drew dozens of stares from lonely and not so lonely men. I turned to Eva and asked, Do you smell the scent of vacation in the air? Before I could continue, she interrupted me. Behave in a public place. I felt a bit perplexed as I wasn't entirely fond of her eagerness to exhibit her decorum and gravity to the public. The nice airport staff member at the check-in counter assisted us in selecting our seats and added us to the waiting list for a possible upgrade to business class. In addition to this, we received another piece of encouraging information. Today's flight was only half full, which meant that about half of the seats remained unoccupied. After completing the check-in process, we navigated through all the customs procedures and strolled into the duty-free zone. I sought a bottle of whiskey, while Eva selected a glamorous Fino, its label resembling something closer to a sparkling wine fit for a celebration. We received an announcement indicating that boarding would commence shortly. As we hurried to the gate, we joined a line that inched forward. The pleasant surprise was that we had been upgraded to business class. Our aircraft was now before us, an immense Boeing 747, a double-decker airliner with the capacity to accommodate up to 400 passengers at a time. At the entrance stood the chief beauties of all airlines, the stewardesses. These dolls, clad in uniform skirts with white shirts, extended a warm welcome to the passengers. Without fail, every one of these young women possessed model-like appearance, boasting well-proportioned figures measuring 90 to 60-90 and radiant smiles that showcased their pristine, snow-white teeth. Hello, they cheerfully greeted everyone. I exchanged a smile with the girls, but as soon as Eva noticed, she hurriedly guided me to our seats, her expression contorting into a displeased grimace. She shoved me all the bags and jumped to her window seat herself. I, on the other hand, quietly spread out our carry-on luggage and sat in the seat next to my wife. "Are you uncomfortable?" I questioned. I booked these seats through a business promotion, and we were upgraded to business class. These are some of the finest seats available. My wife responded with exasperation enough. "You're losing credibility." I shrugged in resignation. How is that my fault then? I welcomed the girls who would have to carry on our wishes the entire flight. It certainly cast a bit of a shadow on the atmosphere, but I guess I'm starting to get used to her craziness and crankiness. Good afternoon. This is Captain of the ship speaking. Welcome aboard our airline flight. We are delighted to have you with us today. Please get settled and make yourselves comfortable as we prepare for takeoff. Our flight attendants positioned themselves at the front of the cabin, providing instructions on fastening the emergency seat belts and indicating the locations of the emergency exits. Julia was undoubtedly the standout among the crew, a true gem. In our cabin, I couldn't help but gaze at her with a sense of fascination. I had encountered beautiful women before, and I might meet more in the future, but there was an extraordinary quality about her. The way her enchanting lips moved when she spoke had a captivating sweetness to it. Her hands gracefully indicated the locations of the escape exits as she moved through the cabin, swaying her hips in an inviting manner, all while maintaining a smile. Our eyes met briefly, and time seemed to stand still for a few moments. She smiled more broadly at me than the others and walked on, running her hand along the back of my chair. My wife was completely unaware of this fact. As the plane taxied onto the runway and picked up speed, an unusual buzzing noise filled my ears, prompting thoughts of concern. Was the aircraft in good condition? What could that sound be? Turning around, I realized that these sounds were my wife turning in. I gave her a gentle nudge and inquired, "Hey, what's going on? Are you practicing mantras?" Her response was an unexpected slap on my arm, followed by her playful impersonation of a bumblebee or wasp. I reached for the magazines in my pocket, flipping through them briefly, with only a brief pause at the menu. Yet my gaze was irresistibly drawn back to Julia once more. Observing her descent downstairs, it dawned on me that it might be a while before I saw her again, so I decided to slip on my headphones and lose myself in watching movies on my phone. A while later, I flagged down a flight attendant and inquired, "May I use the restroom?" She replied, "Certainly, but the ones at the front are currently occupied. Please try the ones at the back." I had no reason to protest, so I followed her instructions. I made my way downstairs and proceeded to the rear section of the plane, known as the tail section. Passengers were scattered about, each engrossed in their own activities. Some were engrossed in movies like I was, others were immersed in magazines, a few were tending to restless children, and I even spotted a grandmother cradling a beautiful cat. It was apparent that planes are truly vast, accommodating a myriad of passenger activities. At last, I reached the rear of the plane and stepped into the restroom, briefly closing the door behind me for some privacy. After I had finished, I re-entered the cabin and suddenly stopped in my tracks. To my surprise, Julia was also at the back, just a few feet away from me, addressing the passengers over the plane's intercom system. I leaned against the wall, appreciating the beauty of the young lady who had caught my eye. She noticed my gaze, smiled, and gradually concluded her conversation before disconnecting. As she approached me, she inquired, "Are you lost? If I recall correctly, you were in the business class on the upper deck." "You're absolutely right, Julia," I responded, and her smile brightened even further when I addressed her by name. "Why are you here?" she asked. "It just so happens that the bathrooms are only open here," I replied. "Ah, right, the ones at the front are always occupied," she noted. She continued, "Have you been to Varadero before?" I answered, "No, it's my first time there." She smiled and said, "Oh, it's my first time there too. But you won't be there for long, right?" "No," I explained, "just 4 days, and then I have a return flight." She nodded approvingly. "That's not bad. You won't be stuck in a hotel for 4 days, will you?" I reassured her, "No, certainly not. I need to explore the town, head to the beach, and have a refreshing swim in the sea," I expressed. "You should only put such beauties on the best flights, in my opinion." "Thank you, Max. That's very kind. Now, allow me to escort you to your seat as they're about to begin serving drinks." I anticipated that Julia would simply let me continue with my business, but to my surprise, she gently lifted me under her arm and guided me, all the while holding me close. I found myself in even closer proximity, occasionally catching the delightful fragrance of her perfume. At one point, she looked back, and our eyes met, resulting in shared smiles. There was definitely a spark between us. It felt that way to me, and shortly thereafter, she guided me to my designated seat, where I found Eva gazing at me with a bit of a frenzy. Julia departed, leaving me in the sole company of Eva. She inquired, "Where have you been?" I replied, "I went to the restroom, but it took half an hour as they had only one restroom available in the back." "That's what I was just discussing. You went to the restroom because the flight attendant took you there." "What kind of conversation is this?" "Shut up, please." My patience was wearing thin. I could no longer tolerate her behavior. "Can't you just sit and wait until we get to Cuba?" I said irritably, "Just be quiet. I'll look at you when some man takes me to Varadero." However, I chose to let the matter drop, so I simply averted my gaze and resumed scrolling through my phone. The flight attendant began to leisurely serve beverages, and I opted for a glass of whiskey in an attempt to ease my frustration, though it offered little relief. 3 hours later, my bladder was once again besieged by a pressing need, forcing me to hastily make my way forward. The majority of passengers had succumbed to slumber following lunch, including Eva, but I couldn't sleep. I discreetly peered behind the curtain and noticed Julia, who set aside her phone and greeted me with a smile. In a hushed tone, she inquired, "Max, you're aware of the button, aren't you?" "I understand, but I really need to use the restroom. Is it available?" After a brief pause, she contemplated, "Let me show you to the rear." "That would be much appreciated." We proceeded to the back of the plane, revisiting where our previous conversation had unfolded. Along the way, I couldn't help but notice that nearly the entire flight's passengers had slipped into slumber. A number of the conductors had also settled in for some rest, dozing off in their seats. Towards the rear of the plane, the atmosphere was notably tranquil. We had finally reached the restroom. "Go ahead, it's empty," Julia guided me. After I had finished, I exited the restroom, where Julia was patiently waiting. "Shall we go?" I inquired, sensing her hands on my chest. "Did you and my wife have an argument because of me?" She asked me with a guilty look. "No, she's just a bit intense," I responded. "I hope she'll find her footing again in Cuba." "Okay, she doesn't like you." We used to get along, but now it's Groundhog Day. I just thought she was jealous. Possibly. Is there a specific reason? Her smile widened, and she tenderly caressed my shoulder. Took another step closer. She granted me the opportunity to kiss her. You're quite a stunning woman. Max, she whispered, her hand resting on my neck, and we kissed. We kissed with our tongues, and we lingered in that passionate moment for a minute. As I gently withdrew my lips from hers, I inquired of Julia, does this pose any risk to you? You're kind of at work. She chuckled, dismissing my concern, and once more our lips met. With a tender touch, I traced a path down her slender neck, planting kisses along the way. Her hands stroked my back, shoulders, and arms, while we surrendered to our desires in that very moment. She was an embodiment of beauty, unveiling pleasures I had long forgotten, once merely a dream I had wished for with Eva. Yet now, I was experiencing it all with this enchanting woman. After both of us had our desires fulfilled, we agreed that when we arrived we would continue our companionship. I returned to my seat to get some rest for a couple of hours. Eva was already asleep, so I sat down quietly, gazing at the ceiling for a brief moment before drifting off into slumber, though it didn't last long. A couple of hours later, I went back to Julia, which she was very happy about. Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what